day everyone, it is Caitlin and today we are making infant belly bands. Hello and welcome. So we're going to start a brand new series today. I'm super excited about it. We're going to start making baby clothes, and no, this is not an announcement. I have recently come to terms with the fact that we're not doing anything to prevent pregnancy because we would love to have a baby. And 9 months is not nearly enough time to do all the things, especially when you have, 3 centuries that you're sewing for, and multiple decades within those centuries. So, we're going to get started now. And I tried making it like a once a month deal, and I quickly realized that wasn't going to work. We were not going to get through anything nearly fast enough, and so now it's going to be once a week. So every Friday from here on out, we're going to do baby clothes. We're going to start with belly bands, also known as flannel bands, although they weren't always made of flannel, so technically we don't have to, so technically belly bands is the more accurate term, although you see both in period, so you know. Anyway, these garments are, let's go by why they're used. They are used on infants. And how long they're used it varies. So they're left over from the swaddling days. So like early on, this is like my time starting in like the year 1800, give or take. People used to swaddle babies. And what that meant was taking long strips of usually linen and wrapping the baby up to where its feet and its arms were very rigid. It couldn't really move except for turn its head side to side slightly. And their reasoning for this was that babies were floppy and they needed to be supported to help their limbs grow strong. And so they were swaddled. And they also need to be kept warm. That was a very big thing, is that babies need to be kept warm. And so swaddling from head to foot kept them warm and it kept them supported. So eventually people realized that it's actually a good thing for babies to move, and that does strengthen their bones to be able to get them to use them and to strengthen their muscles. It's a good thing. And so they stopped swaddling babies. But this is a leftover bit of the swaddle, and I have an original, actually I have like 5 originals. This is an original belly band from the mid-19th century-ish, and it's just a strip of linen, but it's not very big, you can see that. And basically what they're used for is basically the same thing. They're used for keeping baby warm around the middle, with all those internal organs and that sort of thing, and they're also supporting the hips, the waist, the lower back, that area. So it's a little extra layer of support. So in that case, it really is kind of like a corset. And sometimes they actually do lace, just not always. So this particular one, and most of the belly bands I have, the original ones I have, most likely pinned on. And you can see on some of them, I don't know if this is one or not, at least one of them I can see pinholes on. I don't think this one. Okay, there's pinholes here, and there's pinholes here. And I know you're not going to be able to see that on camera, but there are pinholes in this particular belly band. So anyway, yes, sometimes things were pinned on, although by the early 1800s, you're seeing a lot of parenting manuals say don't use pins in baby's clothes, saying that using pins in baby clothes is not a good idea for reasons I think we would understand today. But they were still used, and used fairly often, so you could absolutely pin them on. The other option, and this is also listed in the Workman's Guide of 1838, is to use ties, in which case it does look very much like a corset. This one happens to be shaped, which we're not going to make this type today, but it is a shaped version. It goes this way. And so it kind of fits around baby like this, and it has 2 ties. And hopefully you don't have a very wiggly baby or very upset baby, because this can take a second. And so you basically just tie this. And I'm not going to do all 4 of them. There are 4 ties. But it basically fits like that, and it ties. So yes, like a little mini corset. It just for support and for warmth. Now, as baby grows, this particular one, you have plenty of space to make it grow before it gets too big. So this one can grow about 3 inches. So that's actually pretty nice about it. And technically I put it upside down because this should be on the bottom. This is to accommodate baby's bottom, being bigger than its waist. But yes, so belly bands. Now, as far as like how long they wore belly bands, it varies. So in the earlier 19th century, even up to the Workman's Guide, which is 38, they're mentioning babies wearing them up to 2 years old, like from birth all the way up. And by the 1840s, there's an 1848 reference to a knitted belly band, which we're not going to make today. I kind of wanted to, but this video is going to get far too long if I did that. But the knitted belly band, I'll give you directions for it later, just in case you wanted to make the knitted version. But the knitted one, it actually says babies are wearing these from birth until 6 months. And then when you get all the way up to the 1880s, I have here's an essential, a list of essentials for baby and how to make every single one of them from the 1880s, and it doesn't mention belly bands at all. And so it really, throughout the 19th century, you see this progression of they are very necessary. Almost every baby was wearing one, and they're wearing them until toddlerhood, all the way up to, oh yeah, we don't use this thing anymore. Because they realized that babies really didn't need that support and that warmth. There are other ways to get warmth, and there's other ways to support baby other than this little strip of fabric. So with all that being said, that's basically why we wear belly bands. Yes, they are kind of like corsets for infants, especially with the ones that lace. They're kind of cute. But they're not anywhere restricting. They're not tying them so tight. And even when you do the ones that wrap around several times and you pin them, the advice columns are all stating you should not do this to where it's harmful to the baby. You should not make it so tight the baby can't breathe or that you can't get good circulation. It should be tight, as in it should be comfortably tight. It should not restrict baby at all. It's just an extra layer of support. So just like corsets aren't typically laced to extreme tightness, we're not going to wrap baby with extreme tightness either. So it's essentially the same thing. So earlier on in the century, we see almost exclusively flannel bands. They're actually called flannel bands. Sometimes they're called flannel belly bands, and sometimes they're just called belly bands. So they're made of wool flannel, like a lot of baby stuff, and that would make sense for the warm factor. Somewhere in the 1850s, I found my first reference to a linen belly band, which is why I think this is mid to late 19th century. That and their machine sewn. That's a pretty good clue that it's at least 1840s, but probably no later than the 1880s, just because they weren't well used. So I'm dating them mid 19th century. So with all that being said, we are going to make 2 types of belly bands today. We're going to make 2 linen ones and 2 flannel ones. For the linen ones, we're going to copy basically these. And these are all different sizes. There's a really long one, so basically newborn size, and then older child size. And what I have done, so what I think I'm going to do is cut around the larger size, but then for a newborn I can just overlap it more. So I'll make the ties kind of go in a little bit. That way there's good overlap, but just like the other one, if I put the ties here and here and they overlap to this, I can graduate it as baby grows. So that's going to be less work for me. Now these are made, and all of them are made the same way, all 3 of them. It's a long rectangle that's folded in half. You sew up one short side and one long side, and then you flip it inside out and then whip down, or she just used a machine and just right down. Now I'm doing everything by hand because all of my, I do a lot of earlier stuff too before sewing machines. So I am hand stitching this whole thing just to make it more accurate for that time period. But if you're doing a later time period, like 1840s and up, you can machine sew this stuff. I know there's one that's for sure that was very clearly machine stitched. She did that one by hand. That one's done by hand. One of these was very, very obviously machine done. Yeah, that was that one. It's just right down. So, pretty simple. Just to get some measurements, this one, that would be the wrong end of my tape measure, is approximately 4.5 inches wide by 20.5 inches long. This is probably about 20 inches long. And 19 3/4. And it's about 4.5 inches wide. And baby one is just shy of 4 inches wide by 15.5 inches long. So I think we also need to add seam allowance. Now her seam allowances are pretty narrow, about 1/4 of an inch. So for each side I only need to add 1/2 inch seam allowance. So I think if I wanted a 20-inch long band, let's go and cut it 20.5 inches. And let's see, that's 4.5, which would be 9. 1/2 inch would be 9.5. So our rectangle is going to be 9.5 inches by 20.5 inches. And that'll give us our little shape. But these should go together pretty quickly because again, it's just you cut it, iron it down with a running stitch. We're not even going to back stitch this thing. We're going to do a running stitch, make it super simple. Turn it inside out, whip across there, and then it's just adding the ties. Now, if you didn't want to add the ties, if you wanted to do pins, which you absolutely can do, that's even easier, far less work. But we are going to copy this pattern of ties. So what she did is she took 2 ties that were, or 2 strips of tape that are roughly the same size as, you know, her band, with a little bit of extra. She folded in the ends, and she just kind of did a running stitch just right across where she wanted the little pockets to be. And on the other side, she took an 11-inch tape, folded it in half, and just whipped it down real quick. I think I'm going to do 12 inches because I like that number better than 11. But she didn't do anything to the ends. You can see they're raveling. Yeah, so not a big deal. It should be pretty simple, pretty quick project. So we're going to get started with this, and then we'll go ahead and cut out the flannel one next. Alrighty, so go ahead and get the sewing done. Finish it. Again, like I said, just running stitch. Super simple back and forth stitch. Linen usually has a little bit, some raised lines, and you can kind of use that to keep your stitches straight, especially on this line because this one I didn't cut straight. Now we get to turn this inside out. That corner, this corner. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is iron that. I'm also going to turn in this end about that same 1/4 inch. So it'll be finished on both ends. And we'll go to the clothes and add the ties and do all that fun stuff. But first, we're going to go ahead and cut the wool one. So I have a ton of wool flannel. This is the grayish goods from the Family Heirloom Weavers, which is pretty good wool flannel, and it's a neutral color. All the originals I've handled have been white, not green, but this is the closest I've been able to find at a reasonable price. It's like less than $10 a yard. For what it is, it's pretty good. So we're going to use the Workwoman's Guide for this particular pattern, I guess. So when you take the 14 nails and turn that into inches, it's basically 31.5 inches, which we're going to do on the fold. So that is 15 3/4. Actually, hang on, I got a better idea. How long is this? Oh, it's 26. I am still very tempted just to cut this in half and to use a half one. Because that would be less fabric wastage. By the way, I have washed and dried this wool. Usually I don't do that to wool. But I did it to this wool because I'll be washing and drying the flannel product, and I wanted to felt a little bit because it's supposed to like hold in moisture and that sort of thing. here. That's 28 and a half. That is so close. And the fact that we're doing a giant pleat in the back, we're going to go with it to save on fabric. I'm pretty sure there's rips. Let's find out. And it needs to be like it's 5 2/3 inch. We're going to call it 5 3/4 inch. Oh yeah, rips. And then that. You can also, and I've seen period references, do the flannel ones on the bias, and apparently it gives more stretch. I didn't feel like doing that. Should be 10.5 inches. It is, okay. We're good. I'm going to take this and basically match the ends to a giant pleat in the middle. This is just for extra warmth and extra warmth and support. Yes, those are the words I was looking for. So what we're going to do, and the Workman's Guide has exact measurements, but basically we're just going to turn these under and do a stitch called a herringbone stitch, which is an embroidery stitch, and I'll show you in a minute. Basically herringbone this whole thing down, including the pleats. That way they stay pleats all the way down, off, and then adding the ties. So those are really the only two steps we have for the fabric ones, and then we're going to attempt a knitted belly band. Alright, so we're working on the wool ones. So Workwoman's Guide says to basically herringbone this to hem it, essentially. So that is what I'm doing. I'm getting over the really thick parts. That's the most difficult portion. But I just folded under maybe 1/4 inch and then maybe 3/8 of an inch. Which I don't think this would really ravel, so I probably could have just left it. But, oh well. Yeah, this is a herringbone stitch. On the back, it's just 2 little little stitches. So it holds everything nice and neat. So it's like a fancy hem. I don't have quite enough thread to finish this. I'm hoping I do. I also just kind of see if that stays. We're going to just test that one out. Alright, so ties. I have put on the ties, and since that I have laid them there, I have not sewn them on. And this is the same thing we're doing for the linen ones, so I'll show you those in a minute. Basically, I'm doing 3 ties, and I cut them 12 inches. Fold them in half, just like the original, although I think the original actually had 11-inch ties, but 12-inch ties made more sense to me, so I did 12-inch ties. Fold them in half, put them 1.5 inches from the edge, and I did 3 of them, and the original did 4, because I wasn't thinking when I did this, but here we go, 3. And then on the other side, it's just 2 strips of the twill tape, and I laid this over here, and I put a line between these 2 tapes and between these 2 tapes. And that's where these marks are, so I'm going to, ow, that hurt. I'm going to stitch this down, stitch it like a little bit here, and then I'm going to stitch it down right here, stitch it down here, stitch down here and here, and then go do the other one. And that will sew that on. So I'm just kind of getting the thread over here that way to tie it off. But I'm not stitching it down, like I want it to be loose. I don't know if y'all can see that. Loose. So this will create the little pockets for the ties to go in. So that's what I'm sewn on. I'm going to get this one done and probably go ahead and sew the other ties on, and we'll go work on the ties on the linen pieces. So, yeah, they really do make up pretty quickly. They're, I mean, for being a fairly, not useless article of clothing, but one that wouldn't be seen They do take a bit of time to work up. It's really just the time to make the herringbone. I like the linen ones a lot better. They're, they make up a lot faster. Those ones are just, you know, decently fast. Alright, so doing the ties. Basically I'm doing one, I'm putting my thread in between the two layers so you can't see on either end, and still in on the next one. For the wool ones, I just tied off the thread and went to the next one because I didn't want to see that thread anywhere or let it get caught anywhere on a baby. So that's where we're at. I was going to do a knitted belly band in this video, however, that's going to take me a while. It's all handwork, and I really don't think it'll be very interesting to watch, just because it is handwork, and it's doing the same thing over and over and over again. If you've seen a knit stitch, you can probably figure that out. I will redo the directions in a little bit, though, to make the knitted one, in case you're curious. If I remember correctly, it's from the 1840s. So basically, it's just like a little knitted tube. You make out of wool, and then you put it around baby, and it gets elastic. There's no ties involved, and no pins. It's just, it sits on babies. It sits on baby, and no closures whatsoever. Like a little sock for the belly. But, yeah, that's my eventual project. It's also one of those things, like, I can't find evidence for it before the 1840s. So is it really worth my time to make something that will only be used, like, once or twice? Because I already have I have two wool, regular wool ones. I have two linen ones. Do I really need two more wool ones? I don't think so. So I think we're going to not put that in this video. Also, I've noticed that I've been filming a lot in this video, especially with the explaining portions. And I don't want this video to be very, like, super long. I don't want it to be over 30 minutes, most definitely. I was hoping to keep it under 20. So I don't think adding that extra project is going to work for this particular video. So maybe down the road, if I get better at filming knitting stuff, we'll do that. But anyway, these are done, so let's go look at them. I was supposed to get a doll to actually show them on, and I forgot it at the storage unit. Actually, I have no idea where the doll is, and I probably couldn't get to it if I wanted to. So probably a good thing I didn't think about it, because then I'd be frustrated because I couldn't reach it. But anyway, let's go look at the projects. Alright, here are our belly bands. So yeah, I mean, they are what they are. They're little bands. Let me show you how they work, basically. So this goes around baby's belly, and you take one of these ties and you put it through here, making, you know, I'm sure this is much more difficult when you have a very wiggly baby. You may be very upset because they do not like being dressed, but this is what you do. Hopefully your child isn't wiggly. You do that, and we'll use this, and tie it in a bow, and that keeps it on baby. So you do all three ties, and it sits like that, basically. So this would be essentially in the middle of baby. As baby grows, what you can do is not tie them as tight. So you have all this space. You have about 3 inches to grow, basically. And then you tie it like that, and then this just shows. So it's adjustable size, which is kind of why I liked this style. But yeah, when you put your ties and such on, you want to make sure the ties are on one end, and then the little loops are on the other side of the band. But yeah, we now have 2 linen bands. They're already pre-dirtied, which is excellent, because then I won't be upset when baby, poops on it or spits up on it, because they were dirty before you were born, kid. You were dirty before you were conceived. So you know what? They are that they are. And here's the second one. The camera died for a second, so things look a little bit different. That would be why. But yeah, it's basically the exact same thing. It attaches the same way. We just have a little bit more cushion here for baby in his back. I also learned that people still use belly bands occasionally. Apparently, some people think that it helps with colic, although apparently there's also no scientific evidence for that. But some people in some cultures still use belly bands. I just, I've worked in my church's nursery for 16 years and I've never heard of that, so I don't think it's common here. But I also live in Texas where it's really hot, so that kind of makes sense. The fewer layers, better. But there's baby's belly band. This one, yes, this one took more work, but it's so pretty. Like, a little stitching. So yeah, those are the belly bands. Or flannel bands, whatever you want to call them. And of course, we have the linen version as well. So, yeah. I think hopefully, in theory, 4 should be okay. I mean, that's 1 to wear plus a spare. And if one gets dirty and gross, I can always put the other one on baby and wash the first one and hopefully get it dry before the second one gets messed up. That would be the plan. But yeah, that was a very interesting project. And I'm super excited to be starting on this journey. So getting all the little baby things together. So belly bands are the first thing. You don't have to wear them all the time. I don't think my kid will be wearing them all the time, but I have them. And if it's super cold, there's an extra layer. If we do any events when their umbilical cord is still attached, yeah, I probably would be wearing a belly band because cloth diapers kind of hit around that navel, and this will just protect that area. So you're going to cast on 60 stitches with size 1 needles, and you're going to knit. So instructions for a knitted belly band. So you're going to want to, again, do this out of wool yarn, and you need 2 sizes of needles, size 2 and size 3. So you're going to cast on 60 stitches, and you're going to knit 1 and then purl 1. So knit a stitch, purl a stitch all the way across, and you repeat that for 15 rows. Then you're going to switch to the size 2 needles. Sorry, you're going to do all that first stuff with size 3 needles, the bigger size. Then you're going to switch to the smaller needles, and you're going to continue with the knit 1 stitch, purl 1 stitch for 16 rows. And then you're going to go back to the size 3 needles, and you're going to repeat the knit 1, purl 1 for 15 more rows. So basically it's in 3 parts. It's with the big needles, 15 rows, and then 16 rows of the smaller needle, and then another 15 rows. And then you're going to match the ends that you cast off with the ones you cast on, and you're going to sew it up. And so that way, it's a tube, basically, and it's worn by slipping the band over the feet into the usual belly band position on the baby. And this is an 1849 pattern from the Comprehensive Knitting Book. But yeah, I didn't think we had enough time to add that one in, so just for reference, that's how you would make a knitted belly band if you chose to do so. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me today as we ventured into our very first baby project. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe to the channel. If you're interested in more 19th century baby clothes, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you're notified anytime I upload a new video. Again, they're going to be coming out every Friday. And as always, have a fantastic week, and I'll see you back here on Monday.